Most lead gen agencies aren't bad at outreach. They're just not built to drive revenue. And most founders only learn that after burning months chasing more leads. If you ever thought we're getting replies in meetings, but revenue still feels inconsistent, this video is going to explain exactly why that keeps happening and why switching agencies rarely fixes it. I'm Bob, founder of RevSync, and I usually work with teams after they've tried hiring one or two lead gen agencies. They tried outbound internally and still can't connect activity to revenue. By the time they come to us, the real problem is newer effort, volume, or even copy. In this video, I'm going to break down 3 structural reasons most lead gen agencies don't drive revenue, even when they're technically delivering leads, and what has to exist instead if you want pipeline that actually holds up in value. This isn't an agency hit piece, and it's not about calling people incompetent. It's about understanding the business model mismatch between lead generation and revenue generation. Once you see that mismatch clearly, you'll stop hiring agencies to solve problems they were never designed to own or solve. The old paradigm is simple and familiar. You hire a lead gen agency to run campaigns, generate replies, book meetings, and hand everything off to your sales team. The new paradigm is realizing that revenue doesn't come from campaigns. It comes from infrastructure that decides which leads matter, how fast they're followed up, and how consistently they're nurtured after that first touch. So let's get into pillar 1. Lead gen agencies optimize what they can report, not what compounds. The first reason most lead gen agencies don't drive revenue is that they optimize what they can control and report quickly. Replies, meetings booked, cost per lead, open rates. These are easy to show on a weekly call. Revenue is not. Revenue lives downstream after prioritization routing, follow-ups, and nurture, which means agencies aren't incentivized or scoped to own it. This is where founders start feeling the disconnect. You're paying for performance. The dashboards look busy, but your sales team still complains about lead quality, and your close rates don't really move. The tension isn't because agencies are lying. It's because replies are a proxy metric, not a business outcome. A reply from a bad fit account looks the same on a report as a reply from a perfect buyer, with budget and urgency. Without enrichment, scoring, and context, your pipeline fills up with noise, and that sales still has to sort manually. So the agency hits their numbers, sales feels buried, and leadership sits in the middle, wondering why activity isn't turning into revenue. That's not a people problem. It's a metric problem. The paradigm shift here is understanding that optimizing top funnel signals without downstream context guarantees mismanagement. You don't have a lead volume problem. You have a prioritization problem. Pillar 2, agencies can't fix what they don't own. The second reason lead gen agencies don't drive revenue is that they don't own the system revenue actually runs through. Most agencies never touch your CRM, your scoring logic, your routing, or your follow-ups. They generate demand and then hand it off into whatever messy reality already exists. Dirty data, duplicate records, unclear ownership, and inconsistent follow-ups all stay broken. I've seen teams lose real revenue simply because no system existed to tell reps which lead mattered most or which channel the lead came from. When that happens, good leads die quietly and everyone blames each other. Sales thinks the leads are bad, marketing thinks sales is slow, and the agency thinks they did their job. And revenue keeps leaking in the gaps. This is why hiring more SDRs or switching agencies rarely fixes the issue. You're just pushing more volume into a system that can't really absorb it properly. You can't outsource revenue if the vendor doesn't own the infrastructure that decides how leads are enriched, scored, routed, and followed up. Revenue doesn't live in the campaign. It lives in the system behind the campaign. The paradigm shift is realizing that revenue problems don't start at outreach. They start at the intake. If the system cannot interpret and act on signals correctly, no agency can save it. Also, if you want help figuring out why your lead gen isn't translating to actual revenue, click the link below and you'll get in touch with me and my team and we'll walk you through what needs to be done to make that change. Anyways, pillar 3, campaigns expire, infrastructure compounds. The third reason most lead gen agencies don't drive revenue is that campaigns are temporary, but revenue is cumulative. Agencies run campaigns in sprints, but revenue systems need to learn and adapt over time. When a campaign stops, results stop. When infrastructure improves, the results really compound. Every month, agencies reset new copy, new lists, new tests, new angles. Meanwhile, nothing fundamental changes about how your company processes demand. That's why it feels like you're constantly starting over. You get a short-term spike, then performance decays, and the solution becomes try something new instead of fix what's underneath. Infrastructure behaves differently when you enrich data properly. Scoring improves. When scoring improves, routing improves. When routing improves, follow-up speed improves as well. And when follow-up speed improves, close rates also improve. That learning carries forward. It doesn't reset every single month. This is also where RevSync fundamentally differs from your average agency. We don't just run outreach, we audit and rebuild the revenue infrastructure. So performance improves over time instead of oscillating. In some cases, that even means building a custom RevOps software for our clients whose systems are too complex for off-the-shelf tools. When a company has multiple lead sources, channels, CRMs, and workflows, we'll build a tailored program that handles enrichment, routing, and sequencing in a way that generic tools simply can't. The paradigm shift is understanding that revenue isn't driven by campaigns. It's protected by systems. Campaigns create motion, infrastructure creates leverage. Before you hire a lead gen agency, get activity and meetings, but revenue still feels unpredictable and fragile. After you install revenue infrastructure, so every lead is enriched, prioritized, routed, and followed up correctly without guesswork. Now I want to touch on a big topic, why switching agencies rarely changes the outcome. This is the uncomfortable part most B2B teams don't want to hear. If you don't change the underlying system, switching between agencies just changes the logo on the invoice. The same problems show up again, leads feel hit or miss, sales complains, leadership loses confidence, and the cycle repeats itself over and over again. That's why so many teams have a graveyard of agencies they've kind of outgrown. They didn't outgrow the agency, they outgrew the idea that campaigns alone could drive actual revenue. Until someone owns the full chain from lead intake to follow-up to nurture, the result will always feel very fragile. If you're evaluating growth partners, stop asking who can get us more leads. The question automatically limits you to vendors who only live at that top of the funnel stage. Start asking who owns the system that turns interest into revenue. The question forces a completely different conversation. It shifts the focus from tactics into architecture, from volume to leverage, and from short-term wins to long-term predictability. This is why we don't call ourselves a lead gen agency. Our work starts before outreach and continues long after the first reply is received. We audit your CRM, clean and enrich data, define dynamic ICPs, install predictive scoring, fix routing, and then enable outbound and nurture on top of the system that can actually handle the demand. In cases where off-the-shelf tools break, we build a custom RevOps solution tailored to the client's exact workflow, so their revenue system fits their business instead of us forcing the business to fit into a tool. That's not something agencies are set up to do, and it's not something you can bolt on after the fact. If this resonates, it's probably because you felt the gap between leads coming in and revenue still feeling stuck. That gap is where most teams bleed time, money, and confidence. Building revenue infrastructure internally is possible, but it's complex, cross-functional, and easy to get wrong when you're also trying to hit growth targets. If you want to understand why your lead gen efforts haven't translated into predictable revenue, book a call using the link in the description below, and we'll map exactly where the system is breaking after the lead is generated. Leads are easy to buy, revenue is built. And once you see that distinction clearly, you'll never evaluate growth partners the same way ever again.